It's like something's going on here, and it's not just a few kids. It's just, I don't like what's happening with this because people are getting hurt, and now it's based.
A 79-year-old man is recovering tonight after being assaulted during a daytime carjacking yesterday.
Fox 45's Vincent Hill spoke with the victim and has more on what appears to be a string of carjackings targeting elderly Baltimore residents. Vincent?
Yeah, well, Kymir, I just spoke with that victim here in the last few minutes. He's actually on his way to the hospital. If you notice, it's not quite dark outside, and this is around the time that carjacking happened yesterday in the Cross Country neighborhood in northwest Baltimore. And now, of course, we're learning more carjackings have happened in this area.
It's a troubling trend happening in northwest Baltimore.
Okay, it's Sector 3. We have a ongoing carjacking.
Ongoing carjackings involving senior victims.
The subject pushed her client down and so that his vehicle, using a walker.
The latest happening Thursday afternoon, just before 5 o'clock.
Frankly, I was just minding my own business. That's what I do.
The 79-year-old victim, whose face and name we're not using, describes the horrifying moments.
One of these bastards came over and said, "Give me the keys to your car." And I looked at him and I said, "Give me the keys to your car, otherwise I'm going to knock you down."
That's when he says he was attacked.
He banged on me, I'm having to go to the emergency room now.
DPD later found the vehicle before it crashed into a pole. 8 juveniles between 14 and 16 were caught. 2 15-year-olds were taken to juvenile. The other 6 taken to the hospital and released to their parents or guardians.
I'm kind of shaken up a little bit.
Judah Schamberg is one of the victim's caregivers.
I was just shocked. He's a good man. He's elderly, minding his own business.
On Monday, police say an 83-year-old lady was minding her business when a 16-year-old carjacked her less than a mile away.
Even just think that somebody at a young age will mess with an 83-year-old woman. It's ridiculous.
And back in September, a lady in her 60s assaulted and carjacked in the same neighborhood as the 79-year-old victim from Thursday.
I saw a lady laying in the middle of the parking lot, and she had blood all on her. She was laid out, her shoe was off, her glasses were off, and I thought she was dead.
Why'd you think she was dead?
Because she wasn't moving.
For the 79-year-old, the physical pain.
I'm having real trouble raising my arm, and I'm hurting all the way down. I'm going to go get some pictures taken later. Guys are tough.
Is overshadowed by the financial pain.
It means I don't have a car now. I just paid it off. After 7 years, I don't have a car now.
And again, 2 teens, 2 15-year-olds were taken to the Juvenile Justice Center. It's unclear right now if they're still in custody. 6 teens were released from the hospital and sent back home to their parents or guardians. For now, we're live in northwest Baltimore. Vincent Hill, Fox 45 News.
All right, people, what's going on? So you guys saw the news story. Very awful things going on in the city of Baltimore. Baltimore is dying a very slow death. It's been like this for a very long time. And in fact, I'll go as far as to say every major blue city is having the same issue. Here's the deal. You guys have to understand that when it comes to American culture, every culture that comprises America, Black, Hispanic, Asian, so on and so forth, they're not all the same. That sounds awful, but they're simply not. I want you guys to get very, very familiar with the phrase. I am not Japanese, but I heard this phrase, and I can't repeat it for you because I don't speak Japanese, but I heard this phrase from a Japanese person. And it breaks down to cultural homelessness. I had a Japanese guy tell me one time that a lot of Asians, especially Japanese, don't like blacks because they're culturally homeless. And what he was saying by that is there's nothing that blacks gravitate toward. There's no line drawn that they won't cross in terms of how they conduct themselves or how they conduct themselves with other people and things of that nature. And, Japanese people, not quite the same. There's certain things you don't do because it brings dishonor upon your name, upon your people, upon your country. Blacks don't necessarily have that. And, when I first heard it, I got mad. But over time, I thought about it and I was like, he's not wrong. I want you to think about this. You have a crime here that includes I guess, 8 minors for this particular crime. You have 2 kids that are locked up who are both 15, committing very heinous crimes. They robbed an old man and they took his car and wrecked it. But then there were 6 other people involved. So a total of 8. So 8 people, 8 teenagers gang up on this elderly man and they rob his car. They rob him for his car. They go joyriding and they wreck his car. When you think about that, you have to understand there's something fundamentally broken when you have a large group of individuals who are willing to hurt women and hurt children and hurt the elderly, right? There's something fundamentally wrong with you when you target old people. People like this, you can understand very easily. They come from broken homes. That's not an excuse, but it's just a fact. They come from broken homes, and a lot of times they come from homes where there were no elders. People who target the elderly, you can tell they didn't have grandmothers of sufficient age. They never had adults in their life who were old and frail. They never grew up in a house where it was yes ma'am, no sir. They never grew up in a household where an elder told them to go get something and they had to go get it. They never grew up in a household where they disrespected an elder and they got smacked across the face or they got a belt to their backside. There was never any kind of appreciation for the elderly. They never helped an old lady up the steps. They never helped their grandpa walk on the ice in the winter, right? When he's trying to get to his house. They never ran errands with their grandparents. These people come from homes where the oldest person in the house is like 40, 45. Like their great grandmother had a baby at 16. And then their grandmother had a baby at 16. And then their mother had them at 16. And they're 4 or 5 generations deep in the projects. Section 8, right? That's what I'm talking about. When you have these broken and worthless cultures that don't assimilate well with the majority culture. Like, yes, I get it. We can go on for days and days about slavery, Jim Crow, the civil rights movement, the war on drugs, all of the mass incarceration. We can talk forever about that. But at the end of the day, when you're living in a place, America, the UK, wherever, when you are living amongst other people, no one cares why you are a degenerate. They care that you are a degenerate. And they want to solve that problem quickly. Unfortunately, in America, we have excuse culture. And excuse culture allows for degenerate cultures like, unfortunately, black culture to thrive and become more and more criminal. And I have to just be realistic. There is no such thing as black culture, because culture is when you have all the opportunity to cultivate the music, the language, the religion, you carve out most of your history, the education. There's no rich history of doctors and engineers and inventors and all of this. There's a few here and there, but there's no rich history for black people. And a lot of them, right, they descend into degenerate behavior because of that. Right? When you go to the Japanese community, they have a rich history back in Japan, and that inspires them here. China, same deal. When you go to the Jewish culture, same deal. When you go to a Jewish community, same deal. Even when you go to like a Hispanic community, right? Even though Hispanics, their communities are rife with crime, they actually have a lot of culture, right? And that grounds them. But when you're dealing with black people, unfortunately, there is a staggering lack of culture, and it leads to stuff like this. There's a reason why people are willing to hurt the most vulnerable, and it's not always because they're just psychopaths. A lot of times, you don't have no culture. You don't have any lines you won't cross. No one ever told you that, you don't talk to elders like that. Like, it's very understandable if somebody tells you you don't hurt babies. When you look at the black community, man, they don't have that rule. You look at the music. Look at the music. They don't care nothing about hurting your baby. They don't care nothing about hurting your wife. They don't care nothing about hurting your kids. Even the mafia, the Italian mafia, said no women and kids. We leave the women and kids out. I don't know what the cartels do. I don't know if they have that rule, but let's just look at it like that. When we look at the romanticization, I can't talk today. When we look at the romanticization, when we look at the romanticizing of crime in America, when other groups tell the story, women and kids get left out. But when you look at it in real time, at least for like black culture, nobody gets left out. That is indicative of you having a staggering lack of culture. And it leads to things like this. It's unfortunate, but we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic about what we're dealing with. You're dealing with people who are culturally homeless. They don't have anything to look to. They come from Section 8. The oldest person they know is 40 or so. All they know is the struggle. All they know is poverty. And all they know is live fast, die young. So what happens when you have to live amongst people like that? You get things like this, right? I have lived in Chaldean communities where I helped an elderly neighbor one time, and then I get a knock on my door a little while later, and there's a guy offering me like $50. And I'm like, what is this for? He's like, oh, you helped that person. I was like, oh, no, it's okay. I'm just being a good neighbor. And, the guy basically goes on to explain that's our job to help that person. It's our job to help our people. Like, I need you as a man. I need you to take this. And then, I'm going to make sure that, that woman is taken care of from now on. I live in a Chaldean community. They have their own, certification, when kids go to get their driver's license, they have their own people who do that. When the elderly need a ride, they have their own people who do that. Every service that a person might need in any, let's say you were living in an affluent white neighborhood, every conceivable service that you would need from your young years, from from daycare to elder care, right? Everything in between, they have that. Why? Culture. Now, I will say I haven't necessarily seen that with every culture, but I've seen it with, Arab cultures. I've seen it with Jewish cultures. I've seen it with Asian cultures. I haven't necessarily seen it with, Hispanic cultures, but, the point of the matter is when you look at every culture in America, you can see who's at the top and you can see who's at the bottom. And unfortunately, it all just comes down to the personal decisions that people make, right? These people are making decisions that entrench them in poverty, in crime, and then wondering why they can't escape. And when they can't escape, what happens? Everyone around them is affected because they have no lines that they won't cross. I'm not going to ever be anything, so why should I care about you? That's that prevailing thought process, right? These people don't care. They don't care about your old person. They don't care about the elders in your family because they have no elders in their family. They don't care about the nice things you built because they haven't built any nice things. So why should they care about yours? This is a very, very ugly thing to say. And I understand how people are going to respond in the comments who don't agree. Like I said, I understand the gravity of slavery and Jim Crow and black codes and the war on crime and the war on drugs and COINTELPRO. I understand that. But no one cares why you did not assimilate. They only care that you did not assimilate. And they care about the crimes you commit because of it. They care about the mindset you have because of it. Right? Rap music. You just look at rap music. Rap music used to be relatively not ridiculous, but then it just got more and more and more ridiculous. Why? Because the people who make it entrench themselves further and further into degeneracy. It's nothing but drugs and murder and awful things now, right? And you can't go really anywhere without hearing rap music. Even if you go to an NBA game, you're going to hear rap music, right? So other cultures are now being affected by this. Other cultures, their children are taking on this kind of degenerate mindset. And keep in mind, this is not me just hating on blacks. I don't want to be the self-hating black guy. I'm just telling you this is a issue of culture. And like the Japanese guy told me, some people are culturally homeless. There's a word he used, but I can't pronounce it, like I said. So I'm just telling you what it equates to. It's cultural homelessness. And, it's kind of like if you think about a homeless person, the homeless person can be nice to you. They can be non-obtrusive and everything like that. They can be non-intrusive and they can be non-combative and things like that. But do you want the homeless person outside your building? Do you want homeless encampments in your neighborhood? I mean, the stench, the smell, the sounds, the sights. You don't want your kids to see that. It's the same thing with black culture. Black culture, right? What black people consider culture, you don't want that. How many black athletes conduct themselves in an undignified manner? A lot. How many black entertainers do the same? A lot, right? It kind of just is what it is. And keep in mind, once again, I'm not just hating on black people. I'm telling you, this is an issue of culture. This is one of the reasons why you have to reject things like hookup culture, drug culture, right? You have to reject things like that. Why? Because this is what happens. You go out there, you hook up, you get somebody pregnant, and that starts a cascading effect of people being entrenched in poverty, right? If you have a kid when you're broke, you know how hard it is to overcome that? It's almost impossible. Then what happens? Your kid grows up in poverty and they don't look outside the culture. They don't look outside to anything bigger than themselves because they don't see anyone like them doing well. And then they have a kid young, and then they have a kid young, and it brings your whole lineage down. But what happens when everybody who looks like you does that? Right? And this is why I say these major cities, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Chicago, they're all headed. It's a race to the bottom because there realistically are very few cultures in America who are resisting the degenerate culture of America. And like I said, I'm not trying to be anti-black, but when it comes to degenerate culture, black culture is like right at the top. Me personally, I look at it as an issue of assimilation. You have to assimilate to what makes the country as a whole great. I'm not saying it's white culture. I'm not saying it's Asian culture, this culture, or that culture. It's success culture. There's a culture of success because all white people ain't successful. But even when you go to a place like West Virginia or Kentucky, you don't see white people necessarily doing what, black culture does in mass. There's a reason why from San Diego to Maine, every prison is packed out with majority blacks and Latinos, right? We know about the drug trade. That's a whole other video for a whole other time. So Latinos definitely dominate the prisons on the East and West Coasts. But, you have a lot more blacks and Latinos in prison than you have whites and Asians. It's just a fact. Why? It's culture. Some cultures are degenerate. Some cultures are rich. And some cultures are just, they just are what they are. They're pretty neutral. So this is a very unfortunate situation. This old man lived to the age of 79, and he probably has seen when black culture wasn't what it is today, but he's lived long enough to see it, rot and turn into this and turn against him. And this is also why I say the Democrat cities, the blue cities are falling apart, because you vote in a sympathetic direction when it comes to these cultures. Instead of forcing these people to be responsible, instead of forcing them to take, accountability for their actions, instead of voting to be tough on crime, to eliminate these issues and protect your elders, to protect your women and protect your children, you vote sympathetically. Why? Because now we have, like I said, apology culture. We have this culture of wokeness, right? We have weak culture that's basically destroying the future. Everything that we're doing, everything that we're voting for is something that does not help to sustain our country. It doesn't help to sustain the country. It doesn't help to further the country. It doesn't help to protect the country. And I'm not talking from a financial standpoint. I'm talking about from a cultural standpoint. Your country can be a third world country, but if it has a rich culture and people care about each other, guess what happens? You thrive, you survive, you live to see your good days. But that's not what's happening. Everybody in America is voting for stupid stuff that drags us all down. Like I said, you see this happening. You see rap music everywhere. You see everybody now participating in hookup culture. And when you look on TikTok or Instagram, you see white girls, Asian girls, Hispanic girls, girls of every culture. They're not dancing and doing brain rot stuff to country music. They're mostly doing it to hip hop music, right? Hip hop has become the soundtrack to degeneracy of all forms and fashions. Keep in mind, I'm not hating black people. I'm just simply saying every culture is not equal. And this is one of the reasons I tell you, prejudice keeps you alive. Racism, while ugly, it keeps you alive. Now, this old man in this video, or the old man in this news story, there's nothing he could have really done to avoid this, but this is one of those problems that is solved at the voting booth. You have to stop being soft on degeneracy. You have to stop being sympathetic to degenerate culture. You have to start pushing for culture if you want your old people to be safe. I have a mother who's in her 70s. I don't want my mom to have to deal with that. I don't want my mother to have to deal with these degenerate little kids. But that's a reality for all of us. Why? Because we have become apologetic and sympathetic to degenerate cultures. Right? I don't want to beat this into the ground. There's so much that I could say. And all of it will probably get this video demonetized and get my channel canceled. I'm sure you guys have a lot to say, so let your voices be heard in the comments, and I might have to do a follow-up for all the stuff that I missed. But this video is really triggering as a man who has a 70-year-old mother and a man who lives amongst people, Chaldeans in this case, who have rich history, rich culture that says, let's take care of our own. Let's assimilate to the massive, to the popular culture, but let's also maintain our culture and take care of our own. When I've seen it out of Chaldeans, I've seen it out of Jews, I've seen it out of Asians, I see it with Hispanics, and then I see people who look like me become a nuisance to everyone else. It's just triggering, right? So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I do apologize for rambling, but this is a triggering subject for probably everybody involved. And I'll get at you guys on the next one. Peace.